Welcome to chapter 2 of the book of Ruth. In the last chapter, we see where Ruth and Naomi return from Moab to Israel. Well, Naomi does. Ruth married Naomi's son. And it begins, and to Naomi was a man acquainted to her husband. Now here we see 435 here and 435. It's the same word. And for a husband or a man, it's the same as a guinea can be a wife or a woman. So you wouldn't say, and to Naomi was a husband acquainted to her man. You could say that, but that wouldn't, we know it's her husband. So I just wanted to point that out, this dual usage here, and quite a few dual usages. Some people like to have continuity, have the one word always the same, but it just doesn't work. And the man was mighty in strength. Now the spelling is only, it could be Anir, and the Anir being her husband, it could have the spelling. The spelling just has to do with, this is in the dative, and the man is in the nominative. He was mighty in strength from out of the kin of Elimelech, her husband. Now, mighty in strength, to me, it was more economical strength than we don't see anything in physical strength in the story. And the name to him was Boaz, as we generally call it. And Ruth the Moabitess said to Naomi, now it starts a whole new section here. That first chapter verse was just setting us up to who this person was. But now we get to the story, and they don't know anything about Boaz yet. And Ruth the Moabitess said to Naomi, well, I should go indeed into a field and gather among the ears of wheat, after of whomever I should find favor in his eyes. And that means gleaning. And the gleaning laws were after the people, the workers went through the field and cut everything down and picked it up and bundled it all up. One time, they could only go through it one time, and then whatever was left over could be for the gleaning people, the gleaners, the people that were poor and could go find and pick up whatever was left. Naomi said to Ruth, to her, go, daughter, Thigatir. We have daughter as a transliteration almost. And she went. Ruth went, and having arrived, Ruth collected together in the field after the ones harvesting. She was following them after they were done. And she fell by chance in the portion of the field of Boaz, the one from out of the kin of Elimelech. Now, here I forgot, I wanted to show you another dual usage, and that was a field, Agron, where we had the country of Moab in the last chapter. So it was the field is the idea here, not a nation, and back in the last chapter, and a field. So going now back to where we were, she collected, and she fell by chance in the portion of the field of Boaz. Well, now, it was chance if you look at it on the human side. Just happens to go there, doesn't know anything about him. But yet, God's plan was in place. God was to raise up the great-grandson, I believe, of Boaz would be David. And God had this planned, and this family would be in the lineage of Jesus, and Ruth was a Moabite, not a Jew. And so God had the plan, and she went there into this field and he was a kin of Elimelech. And now a kin in these people meant a lot. There was certain types of laws of hereditary laws of and marriage laws and so forth, very strong as far as being a kin. Here in the United States today, it doesn't matter, a brother or whatever, any kin really doesn't get anything in particular unless the line of, if he was not married and didn't have any children, then possibly the brother would. But basically, it's a very weak laws of kinship as it is in the Bible here. And it says, and behold, Boaz came from out of Bethlehem, and this, of course, this is where Jesus was born, and said to the ones harvesting, so his field was somewhere away from there. Wouldn't it be interesting if it was the same field where the shepherds were later? And the Lord be with you. And they said to him, well, may the Lord bless you. So it really shows here that Boaz had he had the respect of his workers, and he respected them. Brings up the Lord, blessing them and or be with them. And then they said, the Lord bless you. So there was a good relationship with the workers, which should be. And Boaz said to his servant, having been set over the ones harvesting as he's looking out, whose young woman is this? And the servant, attending over the ones harvesting, answered and said, she is the Moabitess servant, returning with Naomi from out of the country of Moab. The Agru, there's a country of Moab. The field, you wouldn't say field of Moab. I guess you could, but pointing that out, that's the same word. And she said to me, I shall collect together, please, and I'll bring in the sheaves behind the ones harvesting. I like to glean. And she came and she stood from morning until evening, and she rested not in the field a little. And Boaz said to Ruth, so he calls her over, did you not hear, O daughter? So now he must have been older to call her daughter. You should not go to collect in another field, and you should not go from here. Well, of course you didn't hear it. He's just a figure of speech. Did you? You probably, you didn't hear this because I'm telling you now. Don't go anywhere else. You should not go forth from here. You join up here with my young women. The imperative. And let your eyes be unto the field, wherever mine the people should harvest, and you should go after them. Behold, I gave charge to the servants to not touch you. Now, you should go after them. Now, I'm not sure if she still is a gleaner or she's actually a worker. Sounds like still gleaning, but he's giving her a lot of leeway. And I gave charge to the servants to not touch you. Now, touching her, that's a figure of speech. I mean, you could just touch somebody, but harming her in any way, sexual harassment possibly, or bossing her, bullying her, could be another way, not letting her do certain things. And when you shall thirst, then you shall go to the vessels, and you shall drink from wherever the servants should drink water. So you can have water from us. And she fell upon her face, and did obeisance upon the ground. Now, obeisance upon the ground. Now, I've mentioned this other places, proskenevo. The King James translators, for some reason, decided to use a strange word called worship. Now, I don't know I have an Oxford English Dictionary behind me. I guess I could look up, but I think I did, but it was sort of, I don't know if it was used, but it's certainly not a good translation as far as the usage of it is today. It may have been correct at the time of 1611 when the King James and whoever was translating it, maybe even Tyndall. I'd have to check that out. But it's called worship every place that this root word in the Greek appears in the New Testament and the Old. They use the word worship. Now, worshiping on the ground, see, it's doing obeisance. Put your face down to the ground, bend over to a higher authority, whether in this case it would be the lord of the manor, more or less, the boss, or father of a family, general, a mayor, governor, president, anybody, king, you would go down on the ground like the Muslims do with those prayer rugs. And so she did that, and it has nothing to do with playing musical instruments. That's praise. I cringe whenever I hear worship services because I know the worship came from this word here, proskenevo, and it doesn't mean playing music or dancing or anything. And it should be praise. And but it is what it is, and the Apostolic Bible has it correct. And so she said to him, well, why is it that I found favor in your eyes to recognize me? And I'm a stranger. Who am I? And Boaz answered and said to her, by report, it was reported to me all as much as you have done with your mother-in-law after the dying of your husband. By report. I remember I mentioned other places where this alpha, gamma, gamma has something to do with the message. And angelos is an angel or a messenger. And the apo in front of it, the prefix, makes it is a report. By report is a noun, and a verb is to report. By report, it was reported in the past tense to me, all as much as you have done with your mother-in-law after the dying of your husband, Naomi's son, and how you left behind your father and your mother, patera and mitera, father and mother, maternal and paternal. And the land of your origin you left, and went to a people which you knew not yesterday and the third day before. I put the third day before, and it has treaties, which they knew that when you say yesterday and third, that it was a period of time, basically, figure of speech. May the Lord repay your work, and may your wage be full from the Lord God of Israel, to whom you came to yield under his wings. That's a beautiful way of saying it. You're under his wings, a protection of the Lord God of Israel. And by this time now she is believing in Kyrios, the Lord. And she said, may I find favor in your eyes, O my master, for you comforted me, and because you spoke in your heart to your bondwoman. And behold, I shall be as one of your maidservants. Now, I'm not sure if that meant she wanted to be hired or not, to work for him, maybe. And Boaz said to her, well, already it is the hour to eat. Draw near here, for you shall eat of my breads and dip your morsel in the vinegar. Dip. And Ruth sat from out of the side of the ones harvesting. So she came there with all those people, the ones of his, and was eating. And Boaz, and apparently they're all together, and Boaz heaped up toasted grain, and she ate, and was filled and left. And she rose up to collect grain, to go out there and gather it. I guess she must still be a gleaner, because she's taking this back. And Boaz gave charge to his servants, saying, and indeed, this is what you do. Let her collect in the midst of the sheaves, and do not shame her. Let her do it. And indeed, in setting aside, you set aside to her from out of the things being heaped up, and allow her, and she shall collect, and you shall not reproach her. So basically, let her have what she wants. And she collected in the field until evening. Asperis, Vespers comes from that. And she beat with a rod what she collected up, and it was about an ephah of barley. So she busted up all the barley off of the stalks. And she carried it and entered into the city, so maybe a bushel. And her mother-in-law saw what she collected. And Ruth brought forth to give to her what was left from out of what she was filled up with. So apparently she may have had some food that she was eating, and she saved the bread or whatever, and piece of meat, and gave that to Naomi. And her mother-in-law, Naomi, said to Ruth, where did you collect today? And where did you do it? may it be the one recognize you be being blessed. Whoever did this and gave you this, it's obvious to her this was a blessing. It wasn't normal. And Ruth, there's again, it has an alpha, a pingele, a report, to her mother-in-law where she did it. Now, again, as 4160 is to do. So it has to, the translation, English translation, has to do with the context. It could be if they were sacrificing and she sacrificed it. But here, tell her where she gleaned. This is what it means. Where did you do it? And Ruth said, she said, the name of the man with whom I did this today is Boaz. And Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, oh, blessed is the Lord, for he abandoned not his mercy with the living and with the ones having died. And she realizes that this man is going to help and that the Lord is the one doing it, and gives him the praise after going through all this, being beaten down for so long, losing her husband and her children, like we all lose a lot of things. But then all of a sudden, like Job, God turns things around and everything starts going the way God had it planned if we were going in his way. And the blessings from God can be amazing. And so I'm hoping for a blessing from God. I getting close to running out of the printed Bibles. And the last time I was almost out of the Bibles, I wasn't going to print anymore 5-6 years ago. And I had, that's kind of like bummed out because, no more Bibles. I'm just going to have the downloads. But no, well, I guess that's what it is. And I got a call from a man who had been purchasing the Bibles to take around to all the libraries in the state of Texas and all the cities, quite a few. And I mentioned I didn't have many left, and he said, were you going to print more? And I said, well, no, probably not. I don't have the money. It's going to cost like $35,000, and I could probably maybe take a loan on my house and sell my car for $10,000 to come up with it. I don't know. And he says, well, I can help you with the $10,000. I went, whoa. And I said, well, when I sell them, then I'll give you the money back. And he says, I'm not talking about a loan. I'm talking about giving it to you. And a couple of days later, I received the remuneration, is that the right word, of the money to put to a down payment for the Bibles, pay $10,000 towards the Bibles. And then I called him to thank him, and he said he's working on the other $25,000, maybe it was $35,000. And then a little bit later, I opened the mail, and here the purchase for the rest of the Bibles was paid for. I was like Naomi at the end of the ropes. There was nothing I can do, and but all of a sudden, whammo! Now I'm at the same place again, except I have about a year's Bibles left, and I don't know how if a third edition will come out or not. And I've been tossing and turning and calling places to find out how much it costs now, and in the middle of doing all of that. And then today was strange. It popped into my mind, just as to translate the Apostolic Bible just popped into my mind in Mrs. Harper's kitchen in Victoria, BC. It popped into my mind. It was like God, Jesus, saying to me, don't you worry about where the Bibles are going to come from. You're the delivery boy. You just deliver them. You just take care of sending them out. Don't worry about, if you don't get them, then that's it. If you do get them, then that's the job that I have for you. So that's where it's at right now. And here, Naomi's now being blessed. And Naomi said to Ruth, the man is near to us, that is a relative, from out of the ones acting as next of kin. Kistevon tone. It's a person that's a relative that has certain rights. marriage rights and land rights and so forth. He's one of us. I think it said the family of Aphothra earlier in the last chapter. And Ruth said to her mother-in-law, now Ruth doesn't know all the things that are going on with their laws and so forth, and she says, well, and also yet he said to me, will you cleave with the young men of mine until whenever they should finish all the harvest, which belongs to me? And Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, it's good, O daughter, that you went forthwith as young women, and they shall not meet with you in another field. You're being taken care of. And Ruth cleaved to the young women of Boaz to collect until they completed the harvest of the barley and the harvest of the wheat. So all this period of time, weeks, month, she was working and picking up and gleaning. Now she could keep that. The other people that worked there, they couldn't take it home. It was Boaz. They were just getting paid the harvest. But the gleaner generally wouldn't get very much. Probably would be better to work than it would be to glean as far as the compensation, but not so with Ruth. Now what happens next is Naomi's way of dealing with the things that she sees and the way a Jewish wife and a mother would do things. And they pretty wise women and know all the tricks of the trade, how to get by certain things and what to do. So we'll find that all out in chapter 3, and I hope you'll join us in the next video seminar. And until then, God bless.